should really make a video.
So for those of you who don't know, yes, Film Cow released the final episode of Charlie the Unicorn this October. I've tried to make this video remotely accessible to people who haven't watched the finale, but I'd highly recommend you pause and catch up before I spoil you on the entire Charlie series. The final episode contains the kind of lore drops that will change the way you see the entire show. As for those of you who have never seen Charlie the Unicorn at all, well, Charlie the Unicorn is a unicorn whose nuisances, blue and pink, love to drag him on nonsensical quests and maybe steal his organs along the way. It's the Squidward and Spongebob dynamic, except that Spongebob will rip out your kidneys while you sleep. There was always a bit of a sinister undertone to Charlie the Unicorn. The show boasted a family-friendly visage, but juxtaposed its cheerful song and dance numbers with gore, death, and organ theft. It wasn't until the final episode, though, that creator Jason Steele finally drew back the curtain and brought that dark underbelly to the forefront. Charlie the Unicorn, the grand finale, is the story of a demon apocalypse brought upon the world by out-of-touch governments and out-of-control corporate tycoons. It is a tale of late-stage capitalism, of the workers' struggle to maintain autonomy under a system that seeks to turn them into thoughtless puppets. Also, a ghost weasel marries a coat. So let's walk through the plot of the finale chronologically. Our story starts when a researcher named Nyx requests to study the powerful magic beneath a tower. Whether they will be allowed to study said magic depends on the consensus of an order of tutelary weasels. As the audience's first glimpse of this world's bureaucracy, the weasels don't exactly inspire confidence. First of all, Norwell, the Weasel Council member, makes sure to stress just how taxing and unfair it is that he's been asked to hold a hearing for Nyx. He makes Nyx feel at fault for a perfectly reasonable request. A request that Nyx says they're open to negotiate.
Well, I guess I'll assemble the council then, even though it's very late.
Thank you.
God, it's so dark and late.
I can wait until morning if it's more convenient.
Too late now. I've already started the council assembly process. Here they come. Oh, wow, they're getting very wet, and they look extremely tired.
We later discovered that these weasels were not appointed to oversee the castle because they met some scholarly qualifications. Rather, they appear to have appointed themselves on the basis of being weasels. With a vague understanding of the tower's power, they have committed their lives to its safeguarding. Yet when presented with new, vital information about said power, information that could help them do their job better, they dismiss it outright.
I have, through my work, come to believe that the actual danger may not be with the tower itself, but instead something deep within the caverns below it. You may be guarding the wrong thing.
I disagree.
Nyx has presented the council with the dry facts of the situation. A weasel disagrees with those facts as though they were opinions, and thereby shuts down Nyx's argument. Note how all the weasels are positioned above Nyx at this meeting. In their eyes, Nyx is nothing but a lowly nuisance. The only reason Nyx is allowed to proceed with their magic research at all is because the council deems their studies outside their jurisdiction. And once Nyx discovers the door under the tower, Norwell decides the situation qualifies as weasel business after all. He bemoans the fact that he'll have to assemble the council all over again and shoos Nyx out into the rain. Norwell later reveals that he and the council were only interested in the door because they believed they could find weapons to secure. They voted amongst themselves to open the door without consulting Nyx, the magical expert, or any of the nearby creatures who might have been affected by such a decision. The weasels then unleashed an untold evil upon the world. Norwell, now a ghost, passes the consequences of his order's actions on to Nyx. It's now Nyx's responsibility to save the world because of a decision the weasels made without their input. To summarize, a group of weasels arbitrarily appoint themselves the sole proprietors of a weapon that poses a threat to the entire world. They hate to make themselves accessible to people outside their organization and make their disdain for outsiders very obvious. They are resistant to any kind of education about the power they hold, and would rather put their rash, uninformed, but still weasel decisions over the careful study of someone like Nyx. And when they make the wrong call, the rest of the world is left to pick up the pieces. Moving on to the mayor of Magic City, City of Magic. This is the point of the finale where I first went, oh, so this is about capitalism. Oh, okay, listen. I'm not a communist. And I don't think Jason Steele is either, since there's a giant communist hammer and banana on the front of the Banana King temple and the globe behind the Banana King's servant. Ex Oriente Lux Banana parodies Ex Oriente Lux, a phrase that means out of the East, light, and refers to the belief that the East offers more cultural wisdom than the materialistic West. As a reminder, the communist-themed Banana King scene turns out to be a front for the blue and pink chaos spirits to steal all Charlie's worldly possessions. So, absurdist humor or anti-communist message? Neither? Both? Argue about it with each other in the comments.
Free market economy, man! Y'all need to learn some economics!
Well, you need to learn some die!
Yeah, I don't know where Jason stands. I myself am a socialist. But I'm gonna have to quote Marx. Charlie the Unicorn made me quote Marx. As exchange values, all commodities are merely definite quantities of congealed labor time. Sociologist Ashley Crossman translates, within capitalism, labor is bought and sold like a commodity, making workers interchangeable. In short, capitalism runs on the commodification of labor. Jason Steele takes this concept to the extreme with Slov, the mayor and creator of Slov Industries. At Slov Industries, you are at once the employer and the employee. You sell your labor to your friends, then employ your friends to perform labor for you. Ashley Crossman writes, also fundamental to capitalism is the exploitation of labor. This means, in the most basic sense, that those who own the means of production extract more value from those who labor than what they pay for that labor. This is the essence of profit in capitalism. We see this play out in the way Slov himself appears to perform no actual labor, yet enjoys a hefty 15% pay cut from every exchange of labor within his workforce.
When I started Slov Industries, they said to me, Slov, how can you expect to build a successful company that doesn't technically do anything? Well, they forgot about you. They forgot about all your hard work.
The money from this enterprise affords Slov the power to merge his company with the city and ascend to mayorhood. It's like the perfect distillation of capitalism. You'll notice that the creatures Nick's visits become harder and harder to access as they become more powerful. The Order of Tutelary Weasels was very reluctant to meet with Nix, a fact they made uncomfortably clear, but Nix was allowed to make an appointment on site and speak to the Order at length. To reach Slov, Nix has to provide an appointment authorization code and climb 37 flights of stairs. Even then, they're only granted a few minutes of Slov's time.
I'm very busy. You have 3 minutes.
Now, I should preface this next part of the video with the fact that by the time Nix finds Slov, Slov has been murdered and his corpse reanimated as a cube demon puppet. Puppet Slov asks Nix,
Can we harness this siphon?
No.
I mean for money, not evil. Money.
Since we've never met Slov before, there's no way for the audience to gauge how much of what Slov says to Nix would be accurate to his character versus how much is just the cube riffing. However, Slov's ambitious capitalist nature, coupled with the way he brushed off Nix's warning before he died, suggests this question would not be out of character for an alive Slov. To make sure, I cheated and asked Jason Steele. Jason confirmed, quote, the Chaos Spirits tend to mimic the personalities of those they puppet, so while I think the real Slov would have been more guarded about revealing his aims, he would absolutely have been sizing up the profit potential of the cube. Jason went on, I thought it was important to include a character like Slov because the decisions that led to the cube catastrophe were not unique to Charlie the CEO, but rather the inevitable and repeatable result of a certain way of thinking. But we'll get to that second part later. For now, Slov. We've established another character who holds immeasurable power over the masses, makes a point of being difficult to access, and could care less about the warnings of experts.
Did you know the mayor threw your letter in the garbage? Look, there's a banana peel on it.
You know, at the end of the day, did the Weasels want to guard the dangerous powers of the tower, or did they want to be the only ones with access to that power? Is there a difference between those two goals? Slov's motivations are less ambiguous. He very clearly wishes to obtain the cube's power purely for his own profit. The willingness of those in power to disregard potential consequences in pursuit of personal gain is a recurring pattern throughout the Charlie finale. As both a mayor and a CEO, Slov reflects the selfishness of our real-life corporate and political leaders, whose decisions are so often swayed not by public opinion or the reports of experts, but the promise of sweet, sweet cash money. But on to Sea City, City of the Sea. Here, Nix meets Suzannex, Empress of Sea City, City of the Sea. Nix tries to warn her of the dangerous demon cubes, but...
Are you talking about the spinning cube thing?
Yes.
Oh, they've already been here, and it's all sorted.
I can't believe it. How?
They were perfectly reasonable. They gave me 100,000 gold coins and the promise not to attack Sea City, City of the Sea, for 10 years, in exchange for all our geographic and surveillance data.
The cube will surely use the data Suzannex provided to advance the apocalypse. Yes, Sea City will be safe for 10 years. Maybe. But then what?
What happens in 10 years?
We die, I guess, but that's in 10 years. Plenty of time to spend all that gold.
I don't even know how to begin.
At least here you could argue that the people of Sea City's City of the Sea wouldn't have stood a chance against the cube, so Suzannex did what she had to do to secure more time for her citizens. Except Suzannex doesn't make that point. She refers to the demon cubes as perfectly reasonable. Her blasé attitude and the line, "we'll die, I guess," betrays a blatant lack of concern for the future. It's not that she's torn up over a decision she was forced to make on behalf of her people. Suzannex seems perfectly happy to sacrifice her citizens, and even herself at some future date, so long as she gets to enjoy her wealth in the interim. I'm rich now. The end of all things? That's a problem for future me. Suzannex doesn't run a corporation like Slav, but as a political leader she has shown an equal propensity for short-term, selfish thinking. In our world, this move fast and break things mentality has become an American staple. Political and corporate leaders secure shiny short-term gains to win favor or capital while ignoring long-term systemic issues. Former Google engineer Justin Rosenstein describes this trend as short-term thinking based on a religion of profit at all costs. Suzannex is also similar to Slav and the Weasels in her resistance to outsider input. Sea City, City of the Sea is very interesting in that it performs inclusivity. It begs outsiders to travel there. It prides itself in its Land People Visitor Center. However, Suzannex stocks the visitor center only with what she presumes outsiders like.
Have you been enjoying our visitor center? We make sure to keep it stocked with all the amenities landwalkers love, like bottled water, paper, little fires.
She also doesn't seem to have considered how a landwalker might leave the city, only enter. Like Slav, she gets Nyx's name wrong. When Nyx corrects her, she makes a guess and then falls back on the wrong name.
Welcome, Nyx NYX. I am Suzannex, Empress of Sea City, City of the Sea.
It's just Nyx.
Excuse me.
My name is Nyx.
Nick?
No, Nyx, NYX.
Nyx NYX, have you been enjoying our visitor center?
Suzannex pretends to make herself accessible to outsiders, but does she actually listen to them? She definitely doesn't care about them on a personal level. The line, "it's a win-win, baby," shows her lack of empathy for the land people now that she's secured a deal for her own survival. But on to the bugs. These alien bugs secretly run the world from outer space. At least someone like Nyx could make an appointment with the Weasels, Slav and Suzannex, and their powers weren't much of a secret. These Bug Overlords are so inaccessible as to make themselves totally unknown to their subjects and, more than that, base their operations in literal space. This exclusive group of powerful rulers, yet again, boasts a flagrant lack of care for the people under their jurisdiction. They don't care when the cubes attack other creatures, they only reach out to Nyx once they start to target their fellow bugs. And even then, only because their personal researchers are out of commission.
What's happening?
The glowing cube thing is killing us! Us! The bugs!
Have you just been watching it kill people?
I mean, we didn't like that it was killing people. We didn't want to interfere.
Later, in the void.
How'd you even get in here? This place is secure. Who are you? Who am I? Who are you? I'm Charlie the Unicorn, the greatest sorcerer in the world.
This might get tricky. To avoid confusion, let's call this unicorn Jeff Bezos. So the bugs were the hardest for Nyx to access up until Jeff Bezos. When Nyx is forced to try and enter his domain, they literally explode. No one was supposed to be able to talk to Jeff Bezos at all, ever. Charlie is only able to reach him because of a loophole in his security system.
My name is Charlie too, and I'm also a unicorn. I think I found a loophole in my security system. Where am I? What is this
Once
place?
Charlie has entered Bezos' domain, Bezos dispenses some wisdom.
You know who's the best customer in the world? I do not. The military. You know what's the most lucrative product in the world? I also do not know that. Labor, especially when the laborer isn't protected by any labor laws.
Turns out, Jeffrey's decision to sell slave labor at the expense of all caution or ethics was the catalyst for this whole apocalypse. Great! Before I go any farther, I feel like I need to address the cube problem. Because, what are the cubes? Well, I mean, they're chaos spirits who were packaged and sold as free labor to the military, then broke free from their containment spells and stole their creator's magic. Now they roam the land, massacring whole cities and using their citizens' corpses as puppets for eccentric musical numbers.
The other unicorn said I needed to come here to stop the W something.
They aren't unicorns, they're corpses puppeted by demons.
What, really? I'm really upset by that.
It's time to go. At least if the portal kills you, your body won't be used for musical numbers or whatever it is they're up to.
But what about on a symbolic level? What do the cubes represent? One interpretation is that the cubes represent the working class. These creatures were stuffed into boxes and sold as free labor. When the pressure became too great, they mutinied and stole the power that was used to repress their autonomy. Anyone who's worked in retail knows the way bosses pressure their workers to maintain a cheerful facade even as they toil their lives away for pocket change. Anyone who's complained about capitalism knows the way people demand you shut up and be happy for what you've got. All this shows puppet-led musical numbers exude a warped manic energy. Soulless husks are made to perform happiness for an audience of ultra-powerful, careless assholes. And maybe that's the cubes' revenge. These cubes were marketed to the military, but we've established that a good portion of the world has ascribed to a system where everyone is both an employee and an employer. It's likely these people didn't get to choose whether they partook in the system, the same way you and I are forced to partake in capitalism in order to survive. But perhaps in the cubes' eyes, the whole world was complicit in their enslavement. Maybe the cubes wanted to strip everyone of their autonomy the same way they'd been stripped of their own. Maybe this is a cautionary tale about how easy it is to become one's oppressors in the quest for freedom and justice.
I'm going to send you through a portal. My current theory is you need to be sufficiently magic to survive entry. If you're not magic enough, your body will cause an energy cascade. The last person only absorbed one magical item, so you're 3 times less likely to explode. If my theory is correct, which it probably isn't, I'm sorry.
Are you the Weeble-Wom?
The what?
The other unicorn said I needed to come here to stop
permission?
W something.
They aren't unicorns.
Hey, Nix.
Corpses
Nix.
by demons.
Nix, are you gonna ask Charlie before you are you gonna ask permission before you forcibly put him through the he could die. Did you get his consent? Nix?
See, while I can understand the appeal of this interpretation, I'm not totally convinced. The chaos spirits seem more like, well, agents of sheer chaos, driven by boredom more so than any need for vengeance.
What is that?
We've gotten kind of bored. We're also bored of the moon, so we're gonna blow it up.
What?
So maybe the cubes don't represent the subjugated working class so much as just the next big dangerous thing. Weapons of mass destruction, credit default swaps, whatever data analysis tech SEL group uses to sway elections. You know, the next big dangerous thing with the potential to destroy millions of lives. The big dangerous thing capitalists love to sell and governments love to deregulate for the sake of the market. That's option B. The cubes represent the nebulous high-risk products out-of-touch entrepreneurs put on the market with no concern for the protests of experts. Or option C. The cubes represent capitalism distilled, even more so than Slov's labor scheme. The chaos spirits are the bigwig capitalists, powerful entities with no regard for the lives of those beneath them as they tear down the world for their own selfish fulfillment. They are the bosses who demand that you perform happiness for their benefit despite how hollow and dead you might feel on the inside. And of course, the blue and pink chaos spirits, the out-of-control capitalists to end out-of-control capitalists, would never have existed had the governments of Charlie's world cracked down on businesses like the OG Charlie the Unicorn, on a system that actively rewards selfish and reckless business practices. Here, I come back to Jason Steele's quote. The decisions that led to the cube catastrophe were not unique to Charlie the CEO, but rather the inevitable and repeatable result of a certain way of thinking. I ascribe this certain way of thinking Jason mentions to the move fast and break things philosophy. Like, as long as this decision benefits me right now, I don't care about the consequences for anyone else or even for me much further down the road. To pursue profit potential above all else, to disregard all danger and the health and autonomy of others. We've seen the way the government figures of Charlie's world have allowed such a philosophy to flourish with their aloof, blasé approach, or how government and corporate forces have coalesced to the point that they exhibit the same behaviors, pursue the same goals. So yeah, I'm kind of torn. Vote now on your phones. Sometimes what the cube represents to you is deeply personal. If you're looking for the show's representation of the subjugated working class, I'd point to
Charlie, when your life's a mess, when you're feeling
Charlie the
blue,
Unicorn.
always in distress.
One thing that stays consistent throughout the Charlie series is Charlie's lack of control over his life.
I don't know why I'm even asking. It's obvious I have no actual choice here. How about we save some time and just go to the freaking moon?
Oh my god, that would be amazing!
Hey, what? Oh!
He has no choice over where he goes or when. The Chaos Spirits will simply show up and force him to partake in their latest shenanigans. He doesn't have control over his body. The Chaos Spirits are wont to steal his organs or use his body as a portal. Even the resistance members of this story, Nyx and Starfish, forced Charlie to absorb random magical artifacts.
I found this enchanted mollusk, the last of its kind. You must absorb it, Charlie. Absorb it, and mollusk magic is yours.
I would rather not do that.
The mollusk and you must merge, Charlie. You must fuse together like colliding stars.
And of course, Charlie has no choice whether he lives or dies. He's entirely at the whim of the Chaos Spirits and the magic of Nyx, Starfish, and Jeff Bezos. This lack of control is reflected in the show's musical numbers. Charlie is never given a verse of his own, only short reaction beats here and there. Reactions which are of course ignored by the singer.
My words are true. Please stop singing to me. What if?
Charlie has no autonomy in his own story. Or almost no autonomy. The only thing Charlie has control over in his life is how he feels about any given situation. You know how I keep coming back to the weird, cheerful facade blue and pink force upon all the dead creatures? Well, the world wants Charlie to wear that facade too. Really, really badly. So many songs in Charlie the Unicorn are dedicated to chastising Charlie for his bad attitude. They place all the blame on Charlie for his unhappiness. They suggest that if he simply went into the Candy Mountain cave, put a banana in his ear, opened himself up to the love of the ocean, got a cat, he'd be happy. But these proposed solutions do nothing to address the root problem of Charlie's oppression, the blue and pink chaos spirits who drag him around on such dangerous adventures. Hell, some of these supposed solutions turn out to be tricks by the chaos spirits to steal Charlie's organs or his stuff. To Charlie, the songs may appear to occur on the performer's own terms, but of course they are created by the chaos spirits. It makes sense then that the messages of these songs would serve the chaos spirits, not Charlie. And then of course there's Everyone is Smiling. This song is the most transparent in its attempts to rob Charlie of his last remaining piece of autonomy, his feelings.
All of your thoughts and feelings are wrong. Oh. Everyone is smiling, but you've got a frown. Everyone is happy, and you're feeling down. That means the problem is inside your head. Or maybe the issue is your heart is dead.
I'd argue that Charlie survived this many adventures partly because of his negative attitude. Starfish may have saved Charlie's life back on the moon, but I feel like Charlie would have saved his own life many times before and after that moment by merit of his own relentless defeatism.
You're like a constant downer, huh?
As many times as Blue and Pink and their musical puppets try to convince him he should be happy, he won't change how he feels. We've seen how quick the Chaos Spirits are to discard or possess anyone they find boring. Charlie's resistance must pose a neat challenge. Charlie's Squidward nature also makes him much more fun to torment than your average Joe. Even after they've decided they're ready to move on to their next victim, Blue and Pink are still unable to resist the siren call of one last Charlie adventure to the tower. This decision affords Charlie the extra time he needs to destroy his tormentors. Charlie's negative feelings are his power. They are what separate him from the soulless, cheerful puppets of the cubes. They are one of the few reasons he's still alive. The Everyone is Smiling song seeks to convince Charlie to rescind that power.
Sadness is just failure by some other name. If you let misery in, it will spread, which means it's your fault every time you feel dread.
If you're not happy with the system, that must be your fault. You're the only one who has a problem. Look at how happy your fellow workers are. Have you tried putting a banana in your ear? It's worth noting, too, that this dolphin is sporting a haircut called a flicked bob, a style that's become synonymous with 1960s America. The 60s coincided with a period of economic prosperity literally called the consumer era. You know, the era people herald as the pinnacle of capitalism and then get annoyed when you bring up the horrific social inequities and civil rights abuses of that period. But back to the song. On one hand, you've got the watery visage of a lovely home. You're told that you can gain access to this perfect dream world, only for that access to be revoked all at once.
Charlie the Unicorn, have a seat. Please make yourself at home. Charlie the Unicorn. What are you doing inside of my house?
The dream house has caught fire. The dolphin doesn't appear to notice or care. She's too concerned with your bad attitude. The house dream dissolves, and as the hellfire rages, the dolphin demands,
"Just stop feeling dread."
I feel like this section captures the clash between the dreamy capitalist utopia of the American imagination and the reality of capitalism, which strings workers along on the promise of material wealth and then delivers on a fiery hellscape. All as we're told over and over again that we are the problem, not the system.
Well, thank you for the advice.
Someone stop me before I go off about how the coat shows how capitalism blurs the line between laborers and material commodities. I also like that Jason picked a dolphin as the singer for Everyone is Smiling, since dolphins are known for their perpetual grin due to the shape of their mouths, a fact that grates against their oft vindictive nature. Anyway, I pick on the Everyone is Smiling song a lot because it feels like a culmination of all the previous Stop Being Sad Charlie songs. We've officially reached the point where the Cube mouthpiece of the day doesn't even pretend to offer Charlie a solution to his unhappiness, doesn't bother to cloak its conformist messages in silliness and cheer so much as declare flat out, with palpable contempt, "Your thoughts and feelings are wrong. Stop feeling sad right now." It's also the only song that gets a reprise. So...
Happy thoughts! Best not to look around. Charlie the unicorn. Now hold still while somebody stabs you in the gut.
Jeff Bezos tells Charlie the only way to stop the cube is to think happy thoughts. However, Charlie refuses to let go of his anger. After years of being sung at last Charlie has center stage, and he uses that opportunity to vent his frustrations.
Everyone is smiling and I've got a frown, but why should I smile as they toss me around? I'm told the issue is inside my head, as they make a world that is withered and dead.
Rather than let everyone convince him to put aside his true feelings, Charlie doubles down. He has a right to be angry at the people who are destroying the world. It's this righteous anger that manifests as a giant statue, and finally frees Charlie from his oppressors. And with the Chaos Spirits goes their magic. All the old familiar set pieces slump and decay. The fun-filled fantasy is no more, leaving only the decimated but real world behind. So, what does this finale say?
What does it mean? What does it all mean?
I'd call it a treatise to the harm perpetuated by out-of-touch governments and unregulated corporate leaders. When I emailed Jason Steele to ask about Charlie and capitalism, he responded, "Regarding Charlie the Unicorn and capitalism, there are few forces better than capitalism at taking otherwise toothless people and technologies and turning them into world-eating monsters. So, when imagining the origins of my own world-eating monster, it was an easy connection to make. It was also easy to imagine a world completely incapable of dealing with that monster. In both our universe and Charlie's, capitalism has created a world where all the most powerful people are closed off from society at large, people who don't care about catastrophic problems so long as their wallets are full, people who won't seek the advice of experts until after it's too late. Out of touch, self-absorbed risk-takers handed unchecked power. The same conditions that allow capitalism to flourish create the perfect ecosystem for apocalypse." And that's what I love about this finale. At this point in Charlie's story, the world already ended a long time ago. After 10,000 years, few creatures appear to have survived Blue and Pink's reign.
Hello.
Hey, you want to go on an adventure?
An adventure? Yeah, okay. Been a while since I've even seen anyone, wow.
We end Charlie's story not on the picture of a lush forest, but of a desolate gray canyon. It's hard to say Charlie saved the world. Most of the world is still dead. It's not guaranteed that someone won't come along and start the capitalist cycle all over again. But for this one moment, Charlie has his hard-won victory. He's free to live his life as he pleases. And that's something to celebrate. In the real world, it's considered rude to complain, because aren't we the ones at fault for our unhappy situations? Charlie the Unicorn says, no, you are not at fault. You are not the one making life unlivable. You have every right to be angry. These people can take away your time and your money and your dignity, but they can't take away how you feel, not unless you let them. Your anger is your power. If an opportunity ever arises, that is where you'll draw the conviction to save yourself. It's a revolutionary message, but more grounded than most. Charlie the Unicorn, the grand finale, doesn't tell you that to save the world, you have to go fistfight a billionaire for the fate of democracy. It doesn't place all the responsibility on you for the ugly state of the world or ask you to come up with a perfect solution that will solve capitalism forever. It simply asks you to allow yourself to be upset, to allow yourself to complain about the exploitation of yourself and others, to stay rooted in the reality of this system and how it makes you feel rather than look away and plug your ears. We may be puppets, but we don't have to be shells. There's an argument to be had that this whole capitalism allegory came out of nowhere. Jason made a point to tie elements of the finale back to the rest of the series, so the finale lore does have a canon backbone.
And yea, for on this day, 10,000 years ago, a force of evil so grand that...
Charlie, get down!
But what about the message about labor as a commodity and the rights of the oppressed? Was narrative precedent necessary to make this twist feel earned? Me? I'm perfectly happy with how the finale turned out. It's okay for me that the capitalist commentary came out of nowhere, because surrealism and absurdism have always been foundational to Charlie the Unicorn as a show. We laugh because we've been caught off guard, and that shock to the system makes absurdism a go-to tool for capitalist critique. In an article about the 2018 film Sorry to Bother You, Aaron Evans argues, "The twist is bizarre, but it is not out of place. It belongs in the film because it is ridiculous. That's the point. It's there to show us that the existence of genetically modified horse-human slaves may not be much more bizarre than anything else that is happening when it comes to capitalism and exploitation." The film is a harsh critique of meritocracy, and as viewers who have likely spent our entire lives normalizing its problems, we need this plot twist to pull us away from any remaining thoughts that these problems are okay or normal. We need something so bizarre and terrifying that we have no choice but to accept that the system that caused it is not a good thing. In my mind, Jason didn't go against his show's roots so much as take advantage of them to make a point. I'm also fine with the finale's capitalist rug pull because it reflects my personal experience with Charlie the Unicorn and capitalism. Charlie the Unicorn was first uploaded to Newgrounds in 2005, but I didn't really get online until around 2007. I would have come across Charlie the Unicorn for the first time after it was uploaded to YouTube by Jeff Swanson. I wonder what large economic event coincided with that time frame.
Major financial institutions have teetered on the edge of collapse.
The Dow tumbled more than 500 points.
Down by nearly 11%.
This market is as volatile as you'll ever see.
Traders say this is the craziest day they have ever seen.
Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old firm, filed for bankruptcy.
Traders here working the phone say a lot of their customers are freaked out, waiting to see how low the Dow will go.
This could be the most serious recession in decades. And that means life, as most Americans know it, is about to change.
The 2007 financial crisis was whack. In essence, an outrageous lack of regulation allowed American banks to make money off very risky loans and credit swaps. Among other various schemes, banks would provide loans to people they knew couldn't pay them back, pay agencies to give those loans a AAA grade, then sell those loans on to the next guy for a fuck ton of cash. At last, the bubble burst, the bankers skipped town with their millions of dollars, and America entered the Great Recession, then our biggest economic crisis since the Great Depression. Millions and millions of Americans lost their jobs, savings, and homes because the banks were allowed to play fast and loose with our nation's capital. I was 10 when the bubble burst. I heard the word economy thrown around a lot, but I didn't understand the mechanics of the situation. Charlie the Unicorn reminds me of an era where, for me, the Great Recession was like this nebulous background radiation. It changed my life, but for the most part, I was able to block out the disaster and focus on stuff like Webkins and Kugye and, yes, Charlie the Unicorn. Then as I got older, more and more of those grown-up words started to make sense. All these questions. Why do corporations have so much power over politicians? Why are colleges and houses and healthcare so expensive? Came back to the same answer. Capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. It really has been all about capitalism for me. It aligns with my personal American experience that a staple of my childhood like Charlie the Unicorn would also have been about capitalism all along, even when I couldn't understand how or why. It's kind of wild to me, too, that the Charlie finale drop would coincide with the next biggest economic crisis since the Great Depression, as well as the biggest strike wave of my generation. The pandemic put a spotlight on company greed, on employers' blatant disregard for the lives of workers, on our government's failure to heed the words of experts. We all got to hear our leaders demand we die for the economy. I'm sure many of you have been told your fears aren't real, that you should plaster on a smile and resume life as usual. And yeah, now America's pissed, and an unprecedented number of workers have decided to make that anger known. What can I say? Art imitates life. Life imitates art. I never know how to end my videos.
I've learned that the wab is no good. Not in this economy. No good. Financially speaking.
I'm very tired.
Hey, squad! Thank you guys so much for all of your support. All the best baked goods to my top patrons, Achutha Anada, Amy Holschwander, Apathetic Gaiety, Benji M, Broomhilda, Canby Coy, Council of Geeks, Dane, Jayet, Lunas Aram, Miranda, Anna Doodles, and Sohas Delitha. I hope everybody has a much better new year. We got this. Until next time. See you, sinners.